Hello, and once again, welcome to One Mormon and His Dog. The subject of today is one that I really don't want to discuss, but it is an issue that many investigators are interested in, and it's one that I feel that needs to be discussed, even though I don't really want to. And I'll explain why I don't want to. The subject is, of course, polygamy. Now, polygamy has not been practiced within the Mormon Church for over 100 years. I'm not going to go into the history of polygamy and the rights, wrongs, or revelations about it. The reality of it is that it doesn't happen nowadays within the LDS, the True Church of Mormonism. It doesn't happen at all. And the reason that I get annoyed about this is, like, would you go up to a Catholic and say, what was your part in the Inquisition? Would you go up to a Jewish person and say, would you tell us about your time as a slave to the Egyptians? You wouldn't. Yet Mormons constantly have to answer to this question about polygamy. We don't practice polygamy. It's not even an issue. We don't discuss it in church. It doesn't come up. Yes, there is a part in the text advocating for polygamy. There's since then been a revelation that polygamy is not appropriate. However, this is the past. This is long past, 100 years ago. It was a different time, different events. As I say, you don't ask Catholics about the Inquisition, you don't ask Jews about Egyptian slavery. So why is it when sister missionaries knock at the door, first thing they ask is, are you sister wives? Are you going to have a plural marriage? It's just absolutely crazy. Talk to any of the female missionaries, and you will hear the stories that I tell you of when they have knocked at doors and people assume that they are part of these weird cults, and it's not fair on them, but it's understandable where people may be coming from because of the media coverage. One thing when I created this channel, I was determined not to become is a Mormon apologist. I'm not going to justify things in the past. I'm not going to try and argue with the naysayers and what I call the Mormophobes about the church. My intent is to actually educate people who are interested in becoming Mormons or have questions about Mormonism. It's not, however, a site to basically sort of like, oh, I'm going to defend this, I'm going to defend that. I don't need to defend it. I don't need to defend it. It's my faith, it's my belief, so I don't need to defend my faith. I know what I believe. I know what I understand to be true. And it's not a case of like, when people come out and they have their arguments, oh, this, that, and the other. I watch a lot of videos every day when I'm preparing to do these channels. I watch the negative videos. I find a lot of them extremely funny because very few are based in fact. Most of them are people who've got some bee in their bonnet for whatever reason, I don't know. They feel threatened because we're saying something that people are listening to, and it destroys their own faith. That's what I see a lot of, and I'm not being arrogant here. I'm saying it. I do see that a lot of sites, they'll have these anti-Mormon stuff, and what I see is fear in those sites, and the fear comes from not having a strong enough faith. I'm not afraid of anything here. I know what I believe. I'm strong in my faith, and I'm not out to defend it. But when the subject of polygamy constantly comes up, it has to be addressed, especially with new investigators who this channel is aimed at, who may have questions about it. But, I have to say to you, I know I've repeated this, but we're talking about ancient history, Don't take me literally when I say ancient history, but, I mean it metaphorically. Over 100 years ago, how many wives Brigham Young had, how many wives Joseph Smith had, has no relevance on today. It really doesn't. And the reason simply being is we don't practice polygamy. The groups and sects that do practice the polygamy are nothing to do with us. We totally disassociate ourselves from the likes of the fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, who are basically a cult. They are a cult. People accuse us of being a cult. If you want to see a cult, that's them. Warren Jeffs, who's in prison for life for being a paedophile, is still leading that church today, if you can call it a church. Basically, to me, I believe, and it's my personal opinion, they're using Mormonism as an excuse to run a paedophile ring. And, they can sue me for saying it. But they are not people of faith. I believe a lot of the people that they indoctrinate really believe it to be their faith, and I have sympathy for them, I have love for them, and, I hope they can escape the situation they're in. But the people who run it are there solely for the purpose of their own sexual gratification. There's nothing else to it. But there are offshoots of Mormonism that practice polygamy, where people are there voluntarily. They don't procreate with underage children, and if that's what they want to do, and no one's being hurt, and everyone agrees with it, let them do it. God gave us all agency. I don't have to agree with something for you to live your life. It doesn't come down to me. I'm not the judge. It's not my place to judge anybody. How they want to do it, entirely up to them. As long as everyone's consensual and no one is being harmed, live your life how you like. That's your free agency. I believe that you should live a life following the Gospels, following the Scriptures, and that's the choice I've made, and that's what I believe God wants us to do. But, it's just hurts me that so many Mormons feel they have to defend themselves against these accusations because of constant media attention on a minority, a very small number. There are 13 million Mormons in the world, members of the Latter-day Saints Church, the LDS, and we are talking a few thousand in these smaller groups. And while that's a significant number, why are they so much more newsworthy than the work Latter-day Saints are doing, like the example I used after Katrina and many other disasters? The Latter-day Saints is more prepared than the US government to respond to a disaster. But you don't hear about that because it's not interesting. We like the sleaze and the dirt and the getting in the muck and holding our heads up high, piously sitting in judgment of people. It makes more interesting news and it gets better ratings and more ad revenue. When they had the news about the raid on the FLDS camp, so many people I heard were just saying the Mormons did this. But they are not Mormons. They are not Christians. And I would go as far as saying I think people like Warren Jeffs are not even human. And to be lumped into that is a really big insult. I don't want to be associated with that, and I disassociate myself from them and their activities completely. It's horrific. So, to basically conclude on this, I don't think the whole concept of Mormons and polygamy is ever going to go away, or at least not in my lifetime. But, you know, I'm hoping at least by watching this, you'll see that we are not those people that you hear about in the news. You know, we don't sit there with 1920s haircuts and putting women into pastel dresses. It doesn't happen. You know, most Mormon women I know are very fashionable and don't look like those cult members. And really, it's just really a case of like, let's move on from this. Let's put this behind us. You know, next time you see a Mormon, don't ask them about polygamy any more than, again, I'll say it, asking a Catholic if they're part of the Inquisition or a Jew if they're part of Egyptian slavery. It's not relevant anymore. And it's time that, you know, even my fellow Mormons, we stop apologizing for it. You know, any more than if my great-grandfather was a slave owner. That's not my fault. You know, my great-grandfather wasn't a slave owner. I lived in England. But if your great-grandfather was a slave owner, should you be responsible for it? I don't think so. You know, and that's about it, really. Thank you for taking the time to watch. Once again, these opinions are mine and mine alone and do not necessarily express the opinions of the LDS Church. Any mistakes are mine and mine alone, and I hope you've enjoyed watching. I will try and make the subject a little bit more fun next time and a little less contentious. Take care and have a blessed day.